Hello friends. First of all, thanks for watching our travel videos and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This time we would like to share with you our experience in Seoul, South Korea's capital. We will also share our experience on a day tour from Seoul to the Korean Demilitarized Zone, also known as DMZ, the infamous border with North Korea. We took a direct flight from Sydney to Seoul. It was nearly 10 hours flight, and when we arrived in Seoul, it was extremely rainy. We had good food on Korean Airlines, so we skipped dinner and went to bed straight to take some rest, as we had too many places to visit in Seoul, too many things to cover for this video. We stayed in Seoul for nearly 5 days, so we had plenty of time to look around different places around Seoul and experience the vivid culture and history of Korea. Seoul has extraordinary public transport and metro system, so we took a train to the CBD of Seoul. Although we had some plans, but we decided not to have a very specific agenda for the day. Depending on the weather, we decided to stroll around Seoul in the CBD and look around different places. We met this lady at a hotel reception in the CBD, and she was kind enough to explain us the Korean road system, the public transport system, and what are the places that we should visit. So the first place we visited is called Cheonggyecheon. Cheonggyecheon is 11-kilometer long modern public recreation space in downtown Seoul. It's beautifully decorated with vegetations, and you can walk along the canal and you can see it there. It's a true public space. It rained most of the day, although there were some sunny patches, but it was rainy. This was our first time in Korea, in Seoul. So we walked along different roads in CBD, through the market, looking at different shops and architecture of Korean buildings, before arriving in the Gwanghwamun Square, the main square in Seoul CBD. Gwanghwamun Square, also known as Gwanghwamun Plaza, is a public square in the heart of Seoul, serving as a public space, and it's a time roads of centuries of Korean history. Gwanghwamun is the main gate to the National Palace of Korea. During our stay in Seoul, we visited Gwanghwamun Square many times, as this is the place where you can visit the National Palace of Korea, National Museum, and many more things to do. It kept raining and we walked for a few hours. We read on the internet that nighttime lighting of the Seoul CBD is spectacular. So we waited a little longer in the CBD, although it was raining, and took some photos. It was a beautiful experience. After a while, we went back to our hotel for the rest of the evening. Next morning was very bright and sunny day. It was in April, so it was a bit chilly, but it was bright. We went to visit Jongmyo Shrine. Jongmyo is a Confucian shrine dedicated to the deceased kings and queens of the Korean Joseon Dynasty. We had very little knowledge about Korean history and the dynasties, but the park was beautifully decorated, well maintained. The terracotta-colored wooden shrines were beautiful, and our local tour guide was explaining about the shrine, the queens and the kings of the Korean dynasties and the history very nicely. Next, we visited Changdeokgung Palace Complex. I think I'm getting all the pronunciations of the Korean names wrong, but I'm giving a try. Changdeokgung Palace is set within a large park in Seoul. It is one of the 5 grand palaces built by the kings of Joseon Dynasty. The grand architecture of the palaces, the roofs, the Korean roofs are uniquely beautiful. The complex is beautifully maintained and preserved. The cherry blossom in April were blooming. It was a nice experience all around. We spent a fair bit of time in the complex. It was so beautiful and peaceful. before going back to our hotel. In that evening, we went to Sebi Islets, artificial islands in the Han River. We wanted to experience the famous rainbow light and sound show of Banpu Bridge, and the light and sound show on the Han River was exceptional. This was a modern Seoul experience, in contrast with the shrines and the palaces that we have seen all day long. Third day once again was a very bright and sunny day in Seoul. We booked a day tour of the Korean Demilitarization Zone, or called DMZ, from Seoul. DMZ separates North Korea from South Korea, and South Koreans are not allowed to go on this tour. Although we booked our tour online before coming to Seoul, but the day before the tour we had to come to the Seoul CBD with our passport to show our passport and get registered on the tour, as DMZ is fully controlled by the US Army. After many security checks, we finally arrived at DMZ by a bus. There were lots of checks and balance on the photography and the type of cameras that we could use. Inside the DMZ Information Center, there was a 3D map demarking the DMZ, how it's separating the North from the South Korea. The DMZ is 250 km long and about 4 km wide. It was established to serve as a buffer zone between the countries of North Korea and South Korea under the provision of Korean Armistice Agreement in 1953, an agreement between North Korea, China and the United Nations commands. We visited Dorasan Station, which is very famous for the unity train between North and South Korea. The unity train between North and South Korea has opened and closed many times repetitively over the last 2 decades. Our South Korean tour guide was explaining matters very nicely. She was very hopeful that one day the peace will be permanent and the family on the both sides will be reunited again. There was a bridge of spy exchange, and we had a very brief opportunity to walk on that bridge. After a while, a separate bus led by the US Army took us into the DMZ and to the Joint Security Zone area. Finally, we arrived at the Joint Security Zone of the DMZ. The infamous sky blue buildings that we always seen in the photographs. This is the actual border between the North Korea and the South Korea. In our recent memory, we have seen this area many times when US President Trump met North Korean President Kim Jong-un in this building. Only for 5 minutes, we were allowed inside one of the infamous sky blue buildings, and we had some photo opportunities. The real soldiers standing still, very still, and there was no video photography was allowed. In this picture, I was basically standing on the North Korean side of the table. To be honest, it was probably one of the most very controlled and tense experience that we had as a tourist. After a while, our bus took us back to Seoul. After we returned from DMZ, we went to visit Namsangol Hanok village. Namsangol Hanok village, also known as the village of traditional houses in the Namsan Valley, is a Korean village located in the area of Pildong neighborhood, central district of Seoul. When we went to the village, there was a fashion photography session going on. The village was beautiful. The original houses were restored and preserved to keep the original historical atmosphere of this area. The black roofs were very iconic. We have seen this in photos, but it was reality. From that beautiful village, we walked up the hill to the Namsan Hill to the Seoul Tower. It was just before the sunset, so we wanted to get the amazing view of Seoul. View of the city of Seoul from the top was just impressive. And the cherry blossoms, well, it was like a forest of cherry blossom. Just before the sunset, it was looking so pretty, exceptional. As the evening progressed, all the lights on the Seoul Tower and all the lights of the Seoul city started to glow almost at once. The impressive view of the Seoul city just before the sunset, well, now it became marvelous, gorgeous, extraordinary. We spent a fair bit of time on the hilltop before going down and visiting a night market. We always love Korean foods because we had extraordinary Korean restaurants in Melbourne and Sydney. Korean foods are always very spicy and tasty. Food was just great in this night market. But our favorite was Haedeok, the stuffed fried pancake. Inside you can have chicken, you can have seafood, or you can have red meats. It was delicious. On the fourth day, we were very lucky to have another gorgeous day. This was our last full day in Seoul, and we had plans to visit the Gwanghwamun Square, the National Palace, and the National Museum. So it was a long day ahead of us with many miles to walk for. As I described earlier in the video, Gwanghwamun is the largest gate to the National Palace of Korea. There were beautifully dressed guards at the gate. It was very nice. Gyeongbokgung, also known as Gyeongbokgung Palace, was the main royal palace of the Joseon Dynasty. Built in 1395, it is located in North Seoul. The largest of the 5 grand palaces built by the Joseon dynasty, Gyeongbokgung served as the home of kings of Joseon dynasty, the king's household, as well as the government of Joseon. Dressed in traditional Korean dress, our local tour guide of the palace was very knowledgeable and explaining things in English very nicely. Weather was gorgeous and the palace campus was so nice, so beautifully preserved and maintained. So we walked there for almost 2 hours. It was nice to have a stroll in the garden, along the canal and the pond. There were ladies in traditional Korean dresses. They were very happy to take photos with us. The cherry blossom once again were just blooming, very colorful. Overall, we had an amazing time in the palace garden. From the garden, we briefly visited the National Palace Museum of Korea, which was also located in the same complex. It was a bright, long and very tiring day for us. From the Korean National Museum, we went back to our hotel. This was our last morning in Seoul. Hard to believe that we have already spent 5 days in Seoul. Just opposite to our hotel in Gangnam, there was a Buddhist temple. So we briefly visited that Buddhist temple in the morning before going to the airport. Like any other places that we visited in Seoul, this temple was also gorgeous. It was peaceful, there were a lot of worshippers. So this was a nice ending to our 5-day tour of Seoul, which was already very colorful and eventful and gorgeous. So friends, this was our 14-minute summary of our 5-day tour of Seoul. Hope you liked exploring Seoul with us. Thanks for watching. Goodbye until next video.